going on, everybody? How's everyone doing out there today? Decided to take a snow day. Got a little bit of a storm happening on the East Coast, so I didn't feel like driving 86 miles one way to work, so I called out for the day, let that snow fall and let them deal with clearing it up so I can make it to work in the morning. So, however, in light of all of that, these arrived in the mail today. These are the RC4WD drive steel stamped beadlock wagon wheels. Ordered these a couple weeks ago from, I think, A Main Hobby. RC4WD drive shows that they're out of stock on these, but if you look around on eBay, you could still come up with a source or two, and I went with A Main. So those showed up, and those are going to go along with the RC4WD drive Patagonia tires that I ordered a few weeks ago as well. They showed up. They've been here for a little while. And when they got here, I realized I didn't have a set of rims that would work with these. I was wondering if I'd be able to use like stock wheels from my Panda or what have you, but they are just a little bit smaller than what the 1-inch tires are for. So I decided to order a set of stamped beadlocks. And these are going to go on, of course, this Rubicon, the SCX24. And so I kind of thought I'd share that whole experience with you, kind of give you some ideas of what you'd be getting into if you wanted to swap out your factory wheels and tires. First and foremost, I really like these a lot. They have been great tires, and I will just as easily go right back to them if I don't notice any major performance difference, or if I end up just not liking these will just become a set for a D90 that I'm working on building in 1/18 scale. At any rate, these have been just awesome. They climb well. They have really decent traction for what they are. You know, they're not crazy, super knobby tires or anything like that, but they just work really well with the vehicle as it is, because I haven't done much to this thing in terms of, you know, mechanical upgrades. It does have shocks, and I did do an angle shock mod. It has wheel weights in it. You can see those in there. And also, too, very shortly after, I think I had it about 3 weeks, I burned up the 88 turn stock motor that comes with these, and so I have since put a barrage motor in, but it has stock gearing, and everything else is all pretty much, you know, bone stock, I guess, as some say, or just completely right out of the box stock. So not much else done. I did put a bumper on, etc., a couple little things like that, and a roof rack. Those are in previous videos. But wheels and tires, I figured I might try something a little bit different. So they're not quite as tall, but they are a little bit wider, as you can see, by probably almost 1/4 of an inch, I'd say, and considerably different tread pattern. So it's going to be interesting to see how these compare to the factory wheels and tires that come on these. The offset on them, I think, is going to probably push the tire out just a little bit more. So you're going to see a little bit of tire poking out from underneath the wheel well. I don't currently have any problem with rub right now in these non-factory locations where the shocks are or anything like that. And I have the body set down pretty much about as far as it can go in the front end, and I've got nothing. And in the back, it barely, and by barely I mean it's just ever so slightly touching, only in certain spots really on the tire, up on the very top of the wheel well here. So I've not had any issue with rubbing or anything like that with this thing. So these being a little bit smaller, I will get absolutely no problems whatsoever. So what I wanted to do is just mount up the wheels and show these tires, just in case anybody out there who's kind of either new to this SCX24 world, was thinking about this wheel and tire combo, anything like that. You'll be able to see what that's going to look like. And I might do a little bit of kitchen crawling here a little bit later and kind of stitch that together so you can see what that's going to be all about. So anyway, let's get right to it, I guess. Let me get this thing out of the way. Put the tire here. So when RC4WD drive stuff shows up, they always include, like at least with their wheels, they include a T-wrench, which is always nice. And then you get all 4 of these wheels that are nice and vacuum packed in some little bit thicker plastic, so you want to probably grab some scissors or a knife or what have you and cut those open and get those out. And I forget what size these hex take on here. I don't know if it's a 1.5 or if it's the 0.9. I'm about to find out. It's one of the two. I just can't recall which. I think it's the 1.5, but I could be wrong. There we go. And let's double check our fit here. Yes, it's the 1.5. So grab your 1.5 millimeter hex and go ahead and spin these screws out. There's 6 of them. And just keep track of where those end up going. And these wheels are fairly simply designed and built, and there is, I'm not sure if a lot of people that have put these together in the past know this, but when these are drilled, they're drilled in a pretty, specific, in a specific way. So it's really not universal. You can't just like spin that around to wherever it wants to go. There are places where the holes line up perfectly, so you kind of have to get the wheel, the front and back part of the wheel lined up properly, and then you add the hub in, which kind of sort of pressure fits into the center part of the wheel. And then you got to be sure that that's lined up as well before you do that. And then you want to have like maybe one screw set into one of the holes, so that way that happens a little bit easier and it kind of falls into position in place a lot faster and a lot quicker. So basically it's just 4 parts minus the bolts here that you got. Here's your front part of the wheel, here's your rear part of the wheel. Here is essentially your hub, with your 7 millimeter hex on the backside, and 6 threaded holes to accept the screws that go through both halves. And then here's the central aluminum part, which you're going to want to insert to the tire first. So we'll start by doing that. Grab this. I usually like to just try and go in a little bit of an angle and then just kind of work that in. And just pull the bead up and around all the way, and then just kind of make sure that that's sort of seated properly all the way around. Goes in really simply, really easily. And then I usually start by taking the rear part, the deep dish, and you may want to kind of go around the tire, and while pressing on the backside with your 2 fingers here, press down with your thumb on the wheel itself, and kind of with your other thumb sort of take the sidewall of the tire and kind of very gently sort of pull it out. And as that's happening, the rear part of the wheel is going to seat in there really nicely. And then also too, it will grab the bead in the way that it's supposed to. You won't have too much unevenness all the way around. So then basically you've got the other side just like that. And this might take a couple tries, but you want to take these wheels and you want to be able to rotate them and kind of look through to either some sort of light source or some sort of like lighter surface. So you can see where that hole pattern lines up along with the wagon wheels themselves. These are factory made, but I, for whatever reason, think that maybe the holes might be hand drilled or drilled by a machine that might not be doing, a 100% totally aligned factory job. So sometimes it takes spinning that wheel around to make sure you get that wheel set up back to where the factory pattern actually is supposed to be, and it can be a little tricky. And I've figured this out now with 2 different sets of these, and each time I've managed to take the time to get them back together like this, it seems to go just so much easier and better. So then what I like to do is kind of hold, I know this is a lot going on, but I take my screw, okay, and I will go ahead and push it through the first and the back layer on this, see if that lines up well enough to where I can get it threaded to the back one. Sometimes that takes a time or 2 as well in order to get that just right. And I'm still not there. Yep. Now some other guys have quite a few different techniques to be able to put these things together, and they are tricky. There's no doubt about it. And as you can see, if I were to show this in a way that you'd be able to see what's happening here, like the holes are aligned, and now the wagons are aligned. And so I should be able to take this and push it the rest of the way through, and with my finger in the backside of the wheel, I should be able to feel this poking through somewhere here. Okay, so once I know that I have that seated properly, I want to go around on the front side of the wheel, on the shallow side, and kind of take that. Oh, see, I pulled it out a little too much right there. And just make sure that that's seated well enough around the front side, because now comes the crucial part where you're going to want to hold the hub onto the back side of this and be able to press this through enough to where the threads can begin to grab those wheels. And I hope these work. I sort of ordered these thinking that maybe the shallow ones would be just fine, but these Patagonias have a pretty thick bead on them, and so it's going to be kind of hit or miss getting these hubs lined up and then having enough thread to be able to reach through both layers of wheel and then grab it to be able to start threading in. I don't actually have, what I do have actually, now I can think about it, I have a set of C-clamps that would probably make this go a little bit easier. But throwing a C-clamp on this might make it a little tough to be able to get to all of the screw head holes, or which have you. So, just trying to do it basically without any tools or anything like that, just to see if I can get it seated properly and get it to work well enough. So I think that's feeling okay right there. I think I've got a couple threads poking through on the back now. So then I take my hub, and this is also where it's very tricky. You can kind of get that lined up well enough to where the threads are sort of sticking into the hub, at least a couple deep, and you can begin turning that screw and give it a feel to find out whether or not you managed to lock on to the hub. And it's kind of a hit and miss sort of thing for the first couple tries that you do it, but if you keep working with it, it does finally work, and you just have to be sure where these holes are lined up. And so then you want to take the screw and put it into the exact opposite side from where you just did over here, and see if you can't catch the threads on that side of the hub as well, and it feels like that's already locking down pretty well. So now what you're going to want to do, once you got two screws in, you go back across to the other side. I mean, at this point you can kind of start working your way around clockwise if you really wanted to, but I think in this situation I usually like to go across in kind of a little bit of a star pattern until, by process of elimination, I'm down to my last one. So since I did this one here, I'll want to go back over here. And I am using the foams in these, so it makes it a little more interesting. I don't want to fully tighten these down, but I'm using the foams in these. I really like how these beadlocks tend to hold air pressure. Granted, I'm running inside, at a pretty consistent temperature, and they probably would shrink up a little bit if I took them outside and they managed to get cold. But at least in my indoor course stuff and just running around the house without foams in them, I really like how my C10 seems to function. The tires don't roll over on any kind of side hill or anything like that. I know sometimes that's a bit of a concern, but the way I like to run that truck and the way I drive it, it seems to kind of almost run what I would feel like a real vehicle would run when you try and drop the pressure to say 9 or 8 to 10 pounds or whatever, for crawling. I know some guys with some real crawlers that really like to air their tires down to as low pressure as possible, so they really, conform over rocks and stuff like that. And I think with foams, sometimes you get that conformity of the wheel, but you end up kind of losing some of that ultimate, how do I want to say it, that compression that you kind of like in these. These don't feel too bad. These are such a soft compound, and they do seem to have a fair amount of give in them. But this, this Jeep is not the heaviest thing in the world, so it's really tough, I think, at times to expect that this is going to do too much with these. The factory wheels and tires do not have foams in them, and they seem to, in my opinion, run as good as they possibly can for what they are and how it's designed. So I want to be able to get that same type of performance, but maybe just a little bit of width and something that's not, the stock wheel and tire setup. We all like to mod our stuff, and this is usually one of the first things that you want to do to something. But I've been running this thing now for about a month or so with the factory setup, and I've really been happy with its performance. But I figured it was time to maybe try something a little bit different. So now that I've got that one put together, let's go ahead and put that on, so you can see what that's going to start to look like. Okay, so they pop right on with the original hexes on there. And then of course that T-wrench, grab that, which should still have the nut in there. Thread that down. Now you don't want to tighten these too much to where you're going to strip the threads. Just enough to get that locked down. Oh yeah, I do like the looks of that. I must say, definitely pretty cool. Now I'm going to go ahead and build up the other ones and get them all ready to go, and then I will show you what this looks like after that's all done, and then maybe I'll take this over a couple of my indoor homemade obstacles here in a few minutes. Well, there you have it. RC4 wheel drive stamped steel beadlock wagon wheels in black with Patagonia tires from RC4 wheel drive. I think it looks pretty cool. I definitely like how it sticks out under the wheel wells a little bit more. Kind of gives it a little more of a solid stance. I'm sure it should help with side hill a little bit. I'm really interested in seeing how these tires perform with foams in them. I do dread taking them back apart just to take the foams out, but I might leave them in. Gotta see how it runs first, see how it does. I'm sure it'll do fine. It's just using foams is a little bit different than what I'm used to. I switch back and forth with my 110s occasionally because I do have a set that actually runs really well without them. And so I kind of tend to lean towards that as an idea sometimes, but these just might work out pretty well. So, at any rate, that's how you do that. See, again, I mean, no rub. Can't complain about the articulation at all. It's got a little bit wider stance. It's going to let it get over a couple things maybe a little bit easier. I lose a little bit, I think, in the wheel weight overall because I'm not using the 10.4 gram wheel weights on these, but I think what I pick up overall might be a little different in terms of performance. I'm not exactly sure where I'll put these yet. They might try and make it onto a couple different RCs that I have, but at least now yeah, I'm pretty happy with how that looks. So I'm going to give it a test run here and see what it drives like.